English translation 240th contact. Monday, 30th December 1991, Iuzuro 33 hours.
Eduard, I greet you.
It pleases me to see you already again, Ptaah. I likewise greet you, but what leads you here again already after 10 days?
My coming here is somewhat premature because I actually first intended to visit you again in a month. But urgent circumstances require my early appearance under the instructions of the High Council. It deal.
What can be of such importance that you must come here on its instructions?
That is what I wanted to explain just now. At our meeting on the 18th of May this year, we spoke of certain events which relate to U.S. America. As usual, I informed the High Council about that, as is always the case when it deals with matters which are of worldwide significance on the Earth. But in this case, I did that only a few days ago because I simply did not find the possibility to do so earlier, because I immediately transferred over into the DAL universe after our meeting on the 18th of May and only briefly returned again. But now the High Council has occupied itself with our dialogue in regard to the mentioned events in the year 1969. In regard to this, I must now, unfortunately, communicate to you and make you attentive to this, that the part of our conversation which concerned these events may under no circumstances be made public and therefore may not be publicized. We received the urgent advice of the High Council to have you remove these passages of conversation from the report or to remove them through our own initiative. The High Council explained that the explanations mentioned through our conversation would lead to very grave and worldwide political effects if you were to publish this. Not only that you would thereby unnecessarily risk your life because the murderers of the USA's Secret Service would be set on to you, rather that the effects of the truth could even lead to grave acts of war. Therefore, it is urgently directed, through the advice of the High Council, that the corresponding passage be taken out of the contact and removed, just as further evidence also must be removed in regard to this about the named unbelievable events. Also, all the group members are urged to keep absolutely silent about these matters if they have already been informed by you about the events and have already received the contact notices. This is of urgent necessity, because according to the statements of the High Council, the Americans have arranged everything so that worldwide the enormous deceit excites no doubt at all and is taken as the actual truth. Truth-revealing information has meanwhile already been forced into denial and nipped in the bud by very massive pressure from the Secret Service. Public organs of publication which uncovered the truth were forced to contradict their public information in this matter and to describe it as pure invention and as fiction, therefore as an invented story from beginning to end.
Note from Ptaah from the 7th of October 2004. Up to today, the situation has developed such that the truth can now be published.
That is indeed quite something. That takes the cake. I would rather that we still publish the story.
This would give rise to very much danger with which you would no more be able to cope than would the group members. It would even endanger the mission.
Then there is no question that I will remove the corresponding conversation from the contact report, just as I will also take care that no information at all about the events will be conveyed. You can rely on that. I thank the High Council for its efforts and for its far-sighted advice. Therefore, however, I also thank you that you have taken the extra effort to come here to warn me, even when I feel it is wretched that one must now be silent about this worldwide criminal behavior. But it is past, forgotten. But as you are now already here, my friend, would you maybe answer 2 or 3 questions that are burning under my fingernails somehow?
Actually, I only came here to inform you about the advice and the necessary measures regarding what was discussed. But if your questions are only 2 or 3, I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you. My first question refers to Urk. According to your explanations, he belonged to the family of the Suras. We have been trying for months to find something about these Suras. During our search, we found out that there is a surname Surenman in Switzerland, and also the name Sur or Sur. Also, Surenbach and Surenalp, etc. are names or designations which appear quite frequently. As a rule, these names and designations are associated with the Low German and Swiss German term Sur or sour. But somehow this does not seem logical to me, because I can hardly imagine that Urk's clan, the Suren, were called the Soren, so to speak. I cannot find a plausible explanation for this. Could you perhaps explain to me what the term Suren meant in Urk's time, and what we have to understand by it today?
The explanation for this is not subject to any secrecy. Suren is an ancient Celtic term that has also become established in various other languages, including all Germanic languages. The original term Shur literally means Sumpf, and Shuren were the names of those people who settled in swampy terrain. They built pile dwellings in the swamp area and lived there, which is why they were called Suren, swamp dwellers. Shur, however, the swamp was called because the ground was acidic, according to the old Celtic term, Sur. The family name Surenman now leads back in the direct lineage to the old Suren, namely in the form that the inhabitants were called men and women from the Suren, which later resulted in the names Surenman and Surenfrau, of which, as far as I know, only the masculine name is still in use today. The name Surenalp originated from the fact that the terrain was marshy, according to which Sumpfalp would be said in today's language. It is the same with the name Surenbach, which would be called Sumpfbach in today's language.
Then the designations Esser or sour in this context actually only have the meaning or the value that they were word values for the acid swamp soil.
That is correct.
Well, then to the second part of the question, sure, does that not have another value as well? During my research, I came across the fact that the terms courage and daring must also be connected with this word.
That is also correct. A single member of the Suras was called Sura, but not only because it meant a single member of the Suras, but because it also meant courage and boldness. The languages of those times were still very sparse in many respects, and thus also with regard to different terms. The swamp dwellers, the Suren, were regarded as very brave and bold because of their pile dwellings, which is why they were also called Shur Suren, thus as bold and courageous swamp dwellers.
Understood. Then the Surah in the Qumran has nothing to do with it?
No.
Then it is just a word value in Arabic for the term chapter.
Certainly.
Can you tell me what the name Urk means? Hans found out that in Holland there is a place by the sea called Urk.
Urk has the meaning of the steadfast one.
And the island or the place that was an island in Holland? Now the former island has become the mainland.
Also, the meaning for this case is the same, steadfastness, an island that stood firm against wind, storm, and sea.
Okay, then that is also clear. Thank you. Here is another note. The question refers to transplants in the sense of how you actually produce them. From earlier explanations, I know that if necessary, you grow transplants with cells that you make grow. How does this happen?
In the earliest times, cell cultures were created for all newborns who were feared to be in need of some kind of transplant one day. The cell culture technique, in this regard, referred to taking cells from those organs or parts of the body that were most likely to be susceptible to disease, etc., from these cell cultures, The transplants corresponding to the prerequisites were cultivated, exactly according to the chronological sequence of the life of the person concerned, whereby the cultivated transplant was always of the same age as the person concerned to whom the cell cultivation transplant belonged. However, this form of transplant cultivation was very limited to those human beings in whom it had been recognized, in younger years, that they would one day need a transplant. Unfortunately, this disadvantaged all those who suddenly needed a transplant due to some kind of illness, etc., which could not then be cultivated. Consequently, our researchers and scientists looked for ways and means to solve this problem as well. One day, the solution was to obtain the necessary transplants in such a form that the necessary cells could be taken from a human at any age and cultivated in the shortest possible time, so that the necessary transplants were available without difficulty. But the most important thing was that a process could be carried out whereby each transplant showed the same signs of aging as the cells removed from the human, so that the transplant was the same age as the human who needed it. However, our scientists were not satisfied with this achievement in any wise, but rather they explored other possibilities, which they then found in the fact that they could use
Considered the possibility of simply reproducing the necessary grafts by means of cold processors using atomic templates.
Yes, that is exactly what I wanted to say with the same words. I suppose you listened to my thoughts?
Certainly not, my friend. You have only thought unusually loud.
Of course, I did not pay attention.
It is okay. So you are saying that today you are generating all the necessary transplants, should they actually be necessary, through multi-duplicators.
Certainly, that is the meaning of my words.
Bernadette also thought along those lines. But I think that it will no longer be part of your everyday life that transplants have to be done, will it?
That corresponds to the actuality.
Well, if it is necessary, then you have the advantage of the cold processor possibility that you can produce transplants that are absolutely in harmony with the immune system of the person in question who needs these transplants. So there should be no defensive reaction, should there?
That is right.
Sure, then another question. You know about our transcripts and that, so far, Bernadette was mainly responsible for the final copies. However, I think that the longer this goes on, the more it will be necessary for other members of the group to also deal with this task, so that I also entrusted Barbara and Eva with tasks in this regard. But Bernadette now thinks that it is not right, because she assumes that the preparation of the final copies is her task alone. But this does not correspond to what I know, namely that different ones have their regulations for the same task, such as Eva and Barbara, Piero and Christina, etc.
You know the facts of the regulations in this respect, and thus also the fact that several group members are classified by regulations of a relevant task. Bernadette has to be clear in this respect that she is not the only power that has classified herself in this form in relation to the cleanup activity of the writings, etc. Her tendency, unfortunately, is that she wishes to acquire the exclusive right for this very important work, although she is not entitled to do so. She has the same rights in every respect as everyone else, except that she should be additionally instructive in the preparation of clean copies to those who are not as well versed and trained in this activity as she is. This in no wise entitles her to want to rise above others in any form.
Thank you. I think that this had to be said by you once, so that no misunderstandings and no rabble-rousing arise.
Discord and misunderstandings, etc., would be out of place. My dear friend, Eduard, already during my last visit I noticed, as also now, that you are carrying your shooting device again. This is very reasonable, and I am glad that you pay attention to my warning.
To be honest, I am not only wearing the pistol because of your warning, but also because various criminal felonious groups are currently wreaking havoc in the vicinity and elsewhere. They enter houses at night and attack those sleeping, beat them up and rob them. Often they also use violence during the day and break into houses to steal. One of their tricks is to check by telephone if anyone is at home. If no one answers the caller, they break in and steal what is not nailed down.
Very regrettable that such can happen. Nevertheless, I am very glad that you are carrying your weapon again.
You never walk around unarmed. But may I perhaps ask you what is going on in the former Soviet Union? In the new Federation, which now actually calls itself what you predicted, namely the Commonwealth of Independent States, which in German is called GUS for short.
I do not have any information about this yet, but I will certainly be able to give it to you on my next visit. I must also first inform myself about all those data which have been fathomed by our responsible persons. But now, my friend, I have to do my other duties again.
May I ask another question?
If it has to be.
Have you been to Quetzal with the bottle of wine?
No, but I will visit him in the next few days. But goodbye now, Eduard. We will meet again very soon.
Goodbye, Ptaah. Goodbye.